Uncertainty around the future of high-speed rail, more than 10 years in, and billions already spent. Why state officials say the project's future lacks transparency and violates state law. Rise in safety concerns surrounding e-bikes.
This is a pretty big safety issue in our communities.
The effort to crack down on sellers who modify e-bikes to be illegal. Sitting down with candidates for governor.
I know the state's going through a lot of hard challenges, but I think that this is our moment to overcome them.
Democrat Tony Thurmond on his vision for California.
Thank you for joining us for California Politics 360. I'm Ashley Zavala. Plans to keep the California high-speed rail project moving forward have hit the brakes. This week, the authority delayed a vote on the project's latest business plan. State lawmakers and officials warn the plan lacks transparency, key cost information, and violates state law. The plan claims the Bakersfield to Merced line will cost $36 billion with the target of finishing it by 2033. The High-Speed Rail Authority also says the original plan for San Francisco to Los Angeles could cost between $126 to $231 billion. The plan does not say how any of this will be paid in full. The plan also assumes lawmakers and the governor will make several changes to state law around permitting for the project. As a result, officials warned the state could be in a position where it's moving forward with less train for more money with little transparency. I sat down with the Democratic State Senator Dave Cortese. He is a key supporter of the project and the chairman of the State Senate's Transportation Committee. Here's part of my conversation with Senator Cortese.
The original vision of the project, LA to San Francisco, this draft plan says that could cost between $126 billion to $231 billion, depending on the circumstances. And there is no funding identified for that. I mean, I know Mr. Chowdhury has said that there have been talks with private investors, but do you actually, do you believe that? Because he's been saying that for almost a year, and this draft plan includes no private money.
Yeah, I think it's really important based on what we see in the report and what Mr. Chowdhury says to us, not just in committee, but what he says to me directly, that we figure out a way to finance the next leg of this project, which is basically Merced to Santa Clara County. The other option is Bakersfield to Palmdale, basically. One of those two need to happen next in order to really finalize the private, what we call P3, the private sector attraction to the project. Nobody, think of some massive national or regional mall builder, the DeBartolo family or somebody like that. They're just not going to come in and sign a contract or even leases on a mall sitting above a train station that we haven't figured out the rest of the public money for yet. So it has to be today's deal. That's how real estate people talk. And the section from Merced to Santa Clara County, where there's huge ridership opportunity, and the section from Bakersfield to Palmdale, where again there's huge ridership opportunity, the funding is not figured out yet. So it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg, which comes first. And I think we do have, or High Speed Rail has, very, very serious private sector investors wanting to come in and take advantage of those opportunities, but they have every right to say, let's see the rest of the state's skin in the game so we know this is really going to happen. And it's going to happen in a way that's going to drive ridership. The beautiful thing about the Central Valley is we're in a greenfield development area. There's not a lot of obstacles, other than downtown Merced and downtown Bakersfield, for example. The rest of it has been clear sailing. It's easy to put a mile-long viaduct in the Central Valley because there's not a lot of obstacles in the way. The bad part about the Central Valley is there's not a lot of ridership. We all know that. There's going to be some. We have major universities in those cities. We have emerging populations and emerging economies. But to really take it to the next level and provide enough ridership to justify high-speed rail, that won't come from the Central Valley alone. It's got to come from Silicon Valley, the Bay Area. It's got to come from Los Angeles. So that's the next piece. I mean, we can't do that on a leap of faith. We've got to have a plan that ties together private investment and, I believe, some more public investment to get at least one of those next major transit stops in a major urban area to connect up to this line, and then people will really start coming to the table.
Do you have confidence in Ian Chaudhry to get that done?
I do. I do because his track record is as a builder of these kinds of projects. I mean, here's a person that came into a state project, a public entity project from a private sector background. I did that, some years ago as a 45-year-old younger man. I came from a private sector development background, to be a full-time elected official. So I can kind of understand there's value added in having a human being who worked for Bechtel and worked for other global builders and developers, who understands the basics. I mean, literally the nuts and bolts of putting together the economic development side of this, and the public-private partnerships that are going to have to satisfy really both sides. The governor's office and the legislature are on one side of this, and the private sector, potential developers, we're in a tangle with them right now. And I think he's highly qualified, to guide negotiations through, but he can't do it without money. And I appreciate the fact that Mr. Chaudhry came to our hearing recently and said, I can't get beyond Merced, with the public financing that I have right now, even with good private sector partners. So he's been clear about that. So it's up to the rest of us to help him. It would have been plausible to have a longer cap and invest period than 20 years. That would have helped us get to Santa Clara County, because the $1 billion a year would have been amortized out for another 4 or 5 years. There's been creative thinking like that. There hasn't been the political consensus to do things like that yet, but there will have to be, sort of this consensus on the legislative side, as well as the attractiveness that we're creating with ridership for the private sector side. Well, but I think he's poised as anyone to pull that off. It's not it's not mission impossible, but it's not an easy task.
State Senator Cortese and I also talk about the lawsuit the state dropped against the federal government after California lost billions in federal funding for the high-speed rail. Who will be California's next governor? My sit-down conversation with Democrat Tony Thurmond, his plan to address teacher pay and students struggling in the classroom. This year, California voters will choose their next governor. Every week leading up to the June primary, we'll hear from one of the top candidates running for the state's highest position. This week, I sat down with Democratic candidate Tony Thurmond to get his thoughts on the major issues impacting Californians. Sitting down with Tony Thurmond.
I love the state. I was born here, and I know the state's going through a lot of hard challenges, but I think that this is our moment to overcome them.
The Democratic chief of California's public schools says he's prepared to cut spending by tackling fraud.
I do think that we can stamp out some waste and fraud and abuse. I think we've seen some examples of where, grants that go out and there's no accountability for tracking those dollars. I think that there are billions. If you look at, unemployment and other agencies where there are dollars that have been misused, that we can, shut that down and collect that revenue.
Like which agencies do you have in mind?
I think that we've seen at EDD, we've seen billions. I think that there's been fraud in many forms of insurance scams. And so I think that there's money that we can do better. But I think as governor, what I will require is that every agency that makes grants has to have an auditing function, every single agency.
To lower costs, he says as governor, he would raise taxes on billionaires and give a tax credit to working people. On healthcare, Thurmond says he would continue providing insurance to undocumented immigrants and would push to eliminate private insurance and have a universal healthcare system in California.
And so I think it's come time for California to pilot a program that other states have also piloted.
So how are you paying for these things?
Again, you're taxing billionaires. And in some ways, we may have to put more impact on the healthcare companies. They are having record profits at a time when more people are not covered.
On schools, to help with teacher pay and classroom performance issues, Thurmond says he would push to change the way the state spends on public schools. To provide more money, he says he'll push to fund them based on student enrollment instead of what the state does now, which is based on daily attendance.
I believe that we have to help schools do something that we've never done before, that we have to figure out a way to attract more students into our system. Even in this climate that we're facing, we may need to have a deeper partnership with Mexico and with other states that border California, where we allow students who can enter the state to attend a California high school and be duly enrolled in a community college, so that we are getting more revenue for our schools, and at the same time building out a workforce that will work on the jobs that California can't fill right now. And so we face challenges, but we have to do problem solving that will help us to move through those challenges, and I believe that we can.
So for people who see your title as Superintendent of Public Instruction, you are an elected official, a constitutional officer who is technically supposed to oversee our public school system.
Yes.
What would you say to those who are like, what have you been doing the last 8 years?
You know what? Californians have a right to say we want more for our kids. I want more for our kids. Both of my children attended and graduated California public schools. And I want to see every student have a great experience here. And I think everyone's right to want to see more for our kids. The good news is we have seen some trending up and some progress in math, in science, and in reading. But it's not enough. This is not a time for us to rest on our laurels. What I say to Californians is we've got to do the one thing we've never done. We have to invest in a plan that makes sure our kids learn to read by 3rd grade, like many other states have done.
On California's climate goals to cut the use of oil and gas, Thurmond says they should be recalibrated and may need to be pushed back.
I think it's going to take some real thought, but we've got great institutions like the University of California, the Cal State University system to help us think through how do we bring alternative technologies into the conversation that help us to get there while we're working through that transition.
Banning the sale of gas-powered cars by 2035, is that something you would do?
Seems like we're not quite there yet. I love the goal. I love the goal. But again, I don't want to just state a headline. I want to be realistic about what I think we can achieve.
What grade would you give Governor Gavin Newsom?
What grade?
A through F.
A through F?
Mr. Superintendent.
A through F. Okay, report card's coming right now.
All right.
You know, when you look at issues like how the governor...
You're going to give him a grade, yes?
I'm going to give him a grade.
Okay.
I'm going to give him a grade.
Okay.
I was going to say that if you look at the way he's fought Trump and the way he led on Prop 50, I give him an A for that. I think a governor often has to balance pushing back on the federal administration, but also knowing when to work with the administration. Overall, I would say I give the governor B- overall for the reasons that came up. High-speed rail, promises made around single-payer health care, promises made around homelessness. You know, these are still big challenges, and I don't think it's any one person's fault, but if you're asking me the grade I give is B-.
3 words that you would use to describe California under a Governor Tony Thurmond.
3 words. Hopeful. Prosperity. United.
Right now on CalPolitics360.com, you can watch my full 30-minute conversation with Tony Thurmond. Well, a crackdown on illegal e-bikes, the warning from the Attorney General, and the action being taken at the state capitol. There's been a rise in concerns surrounding the safety of e-bikes. On Monday, lawmakers are set to debate legislation cracking down on the companies who sell e-bikes that do not comply with California's laws. It's a message echoed by California Attorney General Rob Bonta, who put companies on alert earlier this month. Cecil Hannibal looks into the concerns being raised and explains what riders need to know.
E-bikes are so popular now.
A modern twist to transportation.
It just makes your life so much easier. When you're riding a bike, you can get all the joy out of riding a bike with an e-bike.
Electric bikes have grown into a multi-billion-dollar industry.
It's almost like BMX days back again, you know, or skating. You know, it's just another great outdoor activity for them to do, as long as they're safe and legal.
But not everything on the market is legal to ride in California.
Having consumers understand what they're buying. If you go on Amazon and you search e-bike, you're going to get an illegal device today.
Kendra Ramsey is the executive director of the California Bicycle Coalition, an advocacy group focused on ensuring safer streets.
Folks go to a store or they go on Amazon, they see something being sold as an e-bike, and they buy it and they think, oh, I'm buying this at a store. This is great. It's affordable. It'll get me to work. It'll get me to school. And that's not always the case. And that's really the issue that's being tried to solve here.
Attorney General Rob Bonta cracking down on sellers that modify e-bikes to be faster or more powerful.
I mean, the enforcement's important. It's on our radar. Sometimes with guidance, like there are often businesses that are just not sure, are unclear in the guidance.
In California, there are 3 classes of e-bikes. The first provides assistance while pedaling and goes up to 20 miles per hour. The second has a throttle that provides assistance up to 20 miles per hour. And the third provides assistance up to 28 miles per hour. But for that one, you must be 16 years or older. Researchers with the Mineta Transportation Institute analyzed data from Marin and San Mateo counties that found 88% of e-bikes outside of high schools were not legal e-bikes.
Having sellers have penalties if they're selling something that's not an e-bike, but labeling it an e-bike, and have these other devices actually have regulations to be registered and require licenses if they meet certain criteria. And that's something that my organization, along with several other road safety organizations, are seeking to do.
Cal Bike is co-sponsoring legislation that would crack down on what can be labeled as an e-bike.
This is a pretty big safety issue in our communities.
This one's a used bike which has been modified. It doesn't have pedals anymore. This isn't street legal anymore. We try to educate them the best we can.
For California Politics 360, I'm Cecil Hannibal.
As Cecil mentioned, Cal Bike is co-sponsoring SB 1167. That proposal would amend the types of vehicles that cannot be advertised, sold, or labeled as e-bikes. Lawmakers in the State Senate Appropriations Committee are set to discuss that proposal on Monday at the state capitol. Well, who will be in charge of overseeing California's property tax system? Next, a look at the responsibilities of the Board of Equalization. This year, voters will choose who they want to be in charge of California's property tax system. So before you vote, we want to explain what exactly the Board of Equalization oversees. Edie Lambert breaks it down.
California voters will be electing 4 people directly to the Board of Equalization this year. So what do those board members actually do? Here's a look. The Board of Equalization is in charge of 3 main taxes: property, alcoholic beverages, and insurance. The Board of Equalization also oversees practices for all county assessors, which promotes a uniform practice for collecting property taxes across the state. The board meets every month in Sacramento, and taxpayers can attend those meetings to appeal any decision related to the programs the board oversees. This year, voters will be choosing 4 members in different districts to make up the Board of Equalization, and the 5th member is the state controller. Members of the board can serve 2 4-year terms. You may be wondering how much the members of the Board of Equalization make. Last year, this job paid $184,000. Back to you.
Well, right now on CalPolitics360.com, you can watch this week's full interviews. We also want to hear from you. What issues do you want us to cover? Send us an email at contact@CalPolitics360.com. As always, thank you so much for joining us for this week's California Politics 360. See you next week.